They call it the great white shark. More powerful than 20 men. More fearsome than Moby Dick. The subject of a story and a legend of hate, so that from the very moment it is born, there will never be one good word said about it. The scent of a prey, a flick of that giant tail fin, and it slices through these waters at 35 miles an hour or more. They say it is well not to be around when the great white shark gets mean. But the hunter is also the hunted, and for fishermen, the great white one is indeed a grand prize. Men like Alf Dean, 3 times world record holder, using phenomenal skills and flimsy lines to bring in giants that may weigh a ton. Others hunt it too, but for a different reason. People like Ron and Val Taylor, former world spearfishing champions, husband and wife adventure team. Keen to know more about our world, they have long followed the great white shark. Lured on by the suspense, then the thrill of the chase, they have a story to tell such as no other people in our world today could. This is William Shatner. In a few moments, I'll be taking you along with Ron and Val Taylor to explore the tenacious world of the great white shark. Off the lonely coasts of Australia, the great white shark abounds. He is elsewhere too, America, Europe, along the coasts of Africa, in practically all the temperate parts of our world. But it's here, in these waters, that Ron and Val Taylor have made their most breathtaking contact with him. For them, it all began almost 10 years ago, when Ron first stunned the world with a series of photographs that no one could quite believe. He had taken enormous risks to get them, it was true. A world champion skin diver, he had hung into the water, totally unprotected, just a tail fin away from what everyone regarded as the world's greatest killer. Since then, Ron and Val have been writing, photographing, and documenting for people everywhere their knowledge of this fearsome giant. This time, we're a part of their venture into inner space and the world of the great white shark. About 150 yards off a dangerous reef, the Temptation lies at anchor in 10 fathoms. She is specially rigged out for Ron and Val's pursuit of the great white shark. There is lots to be done. The lures are hung over her sides, huge chunks of animal flesh and pots of whale oil. And the steel cages are tossed overboard, lightweight steel baskets with buoyancy tanks secured to the waiting boats by a steel trace. It is to these cages that Ron and Val Taylor will entrust their lives, for when the sharks do come, as they surely will, the Taylors will enter these cages and submerge into the shark's world with only the thin strands of steel to protect them. While the preparations are going on, the lures are doing their job, leaking into the ocean an oily slick which will spread for miles and act as an infallible beacon for the ravenous sharks to follow. Although it may be a while, Ron and Val don't waste the time. These are the new shark darts. They haven't been tried yet. There will be dangers enough here without them being unprepared for what's in store.
It's a CO2 cylinder, and when you ram it against the shark, the needle goes in, punctures the cylinder, and delivers a lot of gas inside the shark. So they shouldn't like that.
Checking through the safety equipment yet another time is a valuable precaution. Much of this gear is new and unfamiliar to them, especially Val. If they do strike trouble, the long harpoon can be a lifesaver. It works on exactly the same principle as a dart-like needle, injecting an enormous quantity of compressed air. The terrific burst of air bloats the shark, interferes with his ability to swim and to fight. And although this effect is only temporary, it usually lasts long enough for the unlucky diver to make good his escape. But they hope they will have no need of it. Val quickly grasps all the details on the new safety equipment, but it is reassuring for her when Ron produces an old and trusted friend, a .303 bullet fitted into an explosive head, long a favorite of divers all over the world.
I'm pretty certain we won't have to use them, though.
Finally, the identification tags. Ron harpoons these into the fins of the sharks they encounter. It is the scientific part of this expedition. Many experts believe the great white shark to be a true migratory species. Highly unpredictable in their appearances, large numbers of them will suddenly turn up somewhere, stay for a short while, and then just as suddenly disappear again. These important marker tags may yet tell us where these sharks come from and where they go. In the process, science will gain more information, and hopefully greater knowledge will lead to a safer life in the depths of inner space.
Approximate weight and size of every shark to tag, and what the number on the tag is.
The lures have worked. The great white shark is coming in.
Valerie, quick, there's a shark!
Where? Oh, I see.
It always happens this way, so suddenly, so unexpectedly. Ron shouts some hurried orders.
Get in the cages now.
In spite of all the preparation, all the patience, all the waiting, when the big moment finally arrives, it seems no one is ever quite ready. There is no time for please and thank you. These come later. For now, it's get cracking and be careful. It's a man-eater.
When I first saw the white shark, I was standing on the deck of the ship, and I wondered how I would be able to get into the water with this ferocious creature. He keeps going at your propeller.
Meanwhile, a second man-eater has joined the first. When aroused, they'll attack anything. Together, they lunge at the runabout in tow.
Hey, listen, we better pull Rodney's boat up alongside.
I thought the action's down there at his top.
Hey, Rodney? Yeah, coming. Give us a hand.
He goes by many names. Australians call him the white pointer, and his relatives include the Atlantic porbeagle and the mako shark. He lives in the temperate waters of the world, including the west coast of the United States. But the shallow waters off Australia suit this ferocious giant very well.
They're a bit shy now, so we'll float this out behind and he won't be so timid. Make it easier for him.
Baits are cast to keep the monsters on hand for Ron's photography. An old plastic bottle acts as a float and holds the small pieces visible. These pieces are deliberately small. A hungry shark will be less inclined to swim away. Apart from his belly, the great white shark is not really white at all. He is gray, although if he were coming at you, your mind would most likely be on other things than his color. If he does come at you, then you simply do not have a chance. Nature has seen to that. For he is armed with row upon row of triangular-shaped, sword-sharp teeth, all sloping backwards, so that once he is fastened on a victim, he finds it extremely hard to let go. To begin with, Ron just held the camera in the water, and when the shark swam by, he let it run. It was his first attempt at underwater photography on a shark, and whenever the shark came too close, he simply pulled the camera out of the water. But as time went on, he began to get an understanding of the shark, and found that the shark didn't seem to be able to make an instant decision. It didn't appear as if it could suddenly decide to bite on a certain thing.
When I first saw Ron photographing white sharks, he wasn't using a cage, and he seemed to be taking a tremendous risk. But Ron's very careful. He never takes a risk unless it's really well calculated.
As the shark comes in to bite on the carcass, you can see the eye go white. Some sharks have what you call a nictitating membrane, which is the third eyelid that comes over to protect the eye. But the white shark is without such a membrane. He simply rolls his eye back when he bites onto something because he has to whip his head from side to side so these big saber-sharp teeth can saw through bones and flesh. This is the moment when the tailor's theories on the great white shark are put to the test. Ron hangs into the water with no protection. His camera plunges deeply below the surface and only feet away from the head of the killer. The white pointer's size is legendary, and is partly the basis for man's fear of him. His ancestors were huge, too, even bigger, 40 feet and more, and were the species which scientists believe fought to the death, the great sea monsters and dragons of 1,000,000 years ago. Ankle-strapped to save him from overbalancing, Ron again takes one of those terrible gambles that have made up most of his life. With only one shark, well, it's easy enough, but when two or more are there, anything could happen. In his mind, Ron recalls some of the dreadful attacks on man that have involved this brute over the years. Tagging the sharks will hopefully give marine biologists valuable data on which to base further studies. As Val says, it's incredible just how little is known about this important species. No one has ever seen a newborn great white shark. Man's best guess is that he starts out in life somewhere between 3 and 4.5 feet long. Then he grows about 2 feet every year. After 5 years, he will be mature and about 14 feet in length. He can go on to grow even bigger, and there are stories of monsters of 30 feet and more occasionally being sighted. Now it is time, Val decides, for them to meet this great white giant on its own ground, the chilly waters of inner space. Wetsuits, safety equipment, cameras, all checked, all perfect. Ron leads the way, and with a little luck, he'll bring back pictures like never before. But in spite of the steel of the cage, it is still a calculated risk. Lots can go wrong. The very unpredictability of this shark is what makes it so monstrous. Like the time it ravaged 5 people in 10 days off the coast of New Jersey, killing 3 of them in the space of just 1 hour. Practically no waters inhabited by the sea monsters have been spared an attack on an innocent victim. Although it seems to be swimming away now, and the waters appear as placid as a backyard swimming pool, Ron has that tingling feeling, some call it sixth sense, that tells him that to step from the cage now could bring a swift and ghastly death. At first light of the next day, Ron and Val Taylor continue in their quest for knowledge about man's most feared, deadly enemy, the great white shark. Each day presents new challenges and new dangers. Again, they have checked and rechecked all the gear. They enter the water together, spirited on by the suspense and thrills that accompanied their first pursuit of the giant white death almost 10 years ago. Val thinks of this animal as the most perfectly formed creature living today, who was only accidentally brought into contact with man. Science supports her view with proof, at least in part. To satisfy his seemingly endless appetite, he seeks out many species, including stingrays, dogfish, even other sharks. Some smaller fish, such as sardines, also appeal to him. He quietly trails schools of these small fish into bright, shallow waters close to land, the very same waters in which man loves to relax and swim and have fun. And so, as Val says, the white pointer, in search of his favorite fish dinner, is only accidentally thrown into contact with man. It is in this way, unexpectedly and with no warning, that the most tragic attacks of all have come about, frequently upon small children and often in only 3 feet of water. It comes around again, testing the cage with its teeth. Possibly lacking good eyesight, it can miss a bait first time round. What it may lack in vision, however, it seems to make up for in its senses of taste and smell. Now it has the scent, and nothing will drive it away. This is not the first time the Taylors have explored in this manner, and here at Dangerous Reef on 4 or 5 previous occasions, Val is convinced they have been face to face with the very same identical sharks. After a while, they're not in any hurry to snap at the cage, she tells us. It's as though they have learned that it's not edible, but their curiosity can be a bit unnerving. In spite of his size, he is from the fastest family of all the sharks, and some of them lunge at up to 35 miles an hour and with cat-like maneuverability as well. Wherever he may be in inner space, while he is there, he is the unchallenged master of all he surveys. The white death comes round again. This time he lunges, his teeth tearing into the bait. His body thrashes against the steel cage, and Val is thrown sharply against its side. How game she is, caught up here in a show of strength between man and beast. But this kind of courage seems to come easily to her, and has helped make her one of the world's champion women of the sea. Powerful, determined, it strikes at its target with dreadful ferocity. Again and again it strikes. Nothing will deter it now. But this time it's in trouble. It's got itself caught up in the steel trace that secures the cages to the waiting boat. The continuous thrashing to get free only entangles it more. Like that other proud beast, the lion, the great white shark knows no defeat. But a wire around the tail of a shark is the same as a thorn in the paw of a lion. Even worse, because so great is his size and weight that he must constantly keep swimming in order to keep breathing. When he stops swimming, he slowly sinks. His moment has come, and the feared giant hangs helpless, unable to defend himself from even the tiniest fish of the sea. But no matter how bad its reputation may be, there is a bond that makes it impossible for divers to leave any sea creature in distress when it has been caused by man himself. Ron and Val know they must go to the aid of the shark. He offers no resistance to the Taylor's approach. To those of us watching safely from the edge of inner space, scenes like these seem unreal and almost unbelievable. Yet for Ron Taylor, this is not even the first time that he has been involved in dramas as unpredictable as this. He recalls an almost identical experience in these very same waters several years ago. A white pointer ensnared in the very same tow line, exhausted and dying, needing the help of man if it were to survive. Coincidence, perhaps, that it should all be happening again, or is it fate? Ron quickly discards these distracting thoughts to concentrate on the present and all its dangers. Out in the water now, with no cages to protect them, they continue to examine the injured shark. Arms stretched wide, Ron gets a rough guide to the size of the animal. A little over 12 feet, about the length of an average bedroom. It moves, suddenly, unpredictably. The Taylor's hunch was correct. It's alive. It's alive, all right, alive and well, and with more than 1,000 pounds of body weight to make itself felt. There's need for great care now. It could destroy Ron and Val both at this moment, if it wanted to, if it were a true man-eater. Does it know, in some primeval way, that they mean him no harm? Determined to prove their point, they resolve to attempt to pilot him into shallow waters and free him from his entanglement. After all, they can only be right or wrong. For the moment at least, it seems Ron and Val Taylor's faith in the great white shark has been justified. They have entered the water, and with the aid of buoyancy floats, they have managed to steer the man-eater into the shallower waters of Dangerous Reef, one of the long, low formations dotted along this coast, uninhabited save for a few seabirds and an occasional sea lion. The grave risks they take are only too well known to the Taylors. Standing in even 3 feet of water, you are fair game for a shark attack. Not likely, it seems, from the specimen in tow, but from others passing who get the scent of man and fish. The sea lion can't quite believe it all. Manhandling the man-eater. Before untangling the exhausted white pointer, they tag it with one of the identification markers that will help chart its course, if ever man sights it again. An unusual feature of the great white shark and others of his family is that they are more warm-blooded than most. The body temperature of many sharks is the same as the surrounding ocean. Not so the white pointer, whose internal temperature is several degrees warmer than the surrounding sea. This extra heat is now known to be the secret of the tremendous muscle energy which leads to the great speed and power of the species. To check this out for science, Ron plunges a thermometer into the shark's body through a painlessly made incision in its flesh.
$22.55.
Now they resuscitate the shark, rocking its head and forcing water across its gills to revive it. The sea lion rushes off to tell a tale no one will believe. Now, having freed him from the entangling cable that nearly cost him his life, Ron and Val walk the great white shark into the water and point him to freedom. It could clearly have torn them both to pieces if it were of a mind to. The Taylors take this as fairly convincing proof that he is not a man-eater in the truest sense of that word. And so he swims away alone, unloved, and unwelcome. Is this a savage, premeditating killer lusting after blood as most people think? Or a big, dumb brute, blindly following its instinct as its ancestors once had to in order to survive? We may never know. As for Ron and Val Taylor, it's the end of another intriguing look at some of the mysteries of inner space. This is William Shatner. I hope you enjoyed this adventure with Ron and Val Taylor, and I hope you'll join us next time as we go exploring that undersea wonder world in the realm of inner space. All of the scenes in the foregoing program, whether actual or created, depict authenticated fact.